Hi, can you hear me? So thank you for coming to the last obstacle between you and beer. I will try to not take too long of your time, but we'll see how the things go. So today I wanted to talk to you about a subject that is rarely a center of attention when we talk about web development, but nevertheless I think it will become more and more important as time goes by. So just to make sense of the room, how many of you are front-end web developers? And how many are other developers who touch front-end once in a while? And data scientists, BI professionals, business people, anyone who I didn't mention who does something else? Okay, so that's a good mix. So data is eating the world. They say that every year we generate more data than in the whole previous history of humanity. I don't know if it's true, but sounds plausible. So how do we make sense of all that data? So if your name is Neo or you're an accountant, then you probably can just look at a lot of data and understand what's going on. So I'm always fascinated how accountants just tell me, just give me that 1000 by 1000 Excel spreadsheet. I understand everything. I don't need your stupid charts. Everything is clear, but for the rest of us, it's probably more easy. It's probably easier to understand data when we see it represented by some nice graphics that show us what's going on. So, what is data visualization? How do we define the term? So, I like this definition by Andy Kirk. So, data visualization is the representation and presentation of data to facilitate understanding. Short and clear. So, why am I talking about this? So, maybe some of you know me, probably not, but if some of you know me, you probably know me from my work in Windows development, and I did a lot of talks about Windows development. I run an ad network for Windows apps, but I started my developer career as a web developer, and around 2008, I switched to more of a native development and joined my friends at AM Charts, and I worked on the .NET part of that product. That's where I got interested in data visualization. Later on, I started an ad network called a Duplex, which I run until now. But as many of you probably know, the whole Windows ecosystem on the phone sort of died, and on the desktop it's also in an interesting place. So with the company, we are just looking what's going on, and I got bored in the meantime. So I decided maybe I should dabble in web again, and I started helping my friends again. And that's where I get my interest for data visualization renewed. So that was a long intro for those who know me. For those who don't know me, my name is Alan Minzlevich. I'm from Vilnius, Lithuania. And besides being the CEO of a Duplex and helping my friends at IM Charts, I'm also a Microsoft MVP, which stands for Most Valuable Professional in Windows Development. So the agenda for today is pretty straightforward. We will talk about past, present, and future of data visualization. And I like to define those periods by the function of visualization in each of them. So in the past, we just used data visualization just an illustration to the data we had on the web page, something like that. Nowadays, charts help us engage with data, maybe find something interesting, some insights. And in the future, I believe that data visualization will be the center of attention and will control a lot of things and maybe move to a more central stage. So let's start with the past and a cheesy quote to remind you why it's important. So in the early days of the web, we just took fixed width font, placed a lot of characters, and here we go, we have a basic bar chart. Later on, we discovered that we can take a single pixel image and stretch it to the dimensions that we need, and we have a pretty nice bar chart. Anyone done this? Yeah. So and obviously the laziest of them all just create a chart in Excel, save as image, and here you go. We have a web page with a chart. So later on, an era of server-side generators came, and signature piece of software in the 90s was a tool called Webalizer. Anyone used it? Quite a lot of you. So for those who haven't used it, I will show a demo. It's apparently it's still around in some form. It has this modern website. I especially like this part of it. So we can check some reports. So as you can see, this looks old school, but generally it looks like basically the important part of Google Analytics now, minus all the tracking. So as you can see, in the 90s, we had pretty nice tool to generate charts on this server. This worked. I don't know if you could configure it differently, but normally every night it ran through your web server logs and generated these reports for each day and then for a month, etc. So then we started getting tools to generate charts on the server. On the PHP side, we had a tool called JPGraph. On the .NET side, we had Dundas charts. Then Microsoft added ASP.NET Charting Control to their toolkit. And the final product in this whole generation was Google Charts, which now is a modern JavaScript library. But back in the day, it was generating images on the server, and the most interesting part of it was that it generated everything. You just sent your data and parameters and settings via the HTTP query string, and it returned an image. That was what was awesome about it back in the day. So besides being non-interactive, etc., the main drawback of all of this is just in the name. Everything is generated on the server, and you can imagine that for charts, which are often computationally intense things, it's quite a big strain on the server hardware and software. So this brings us to present, and by looking at this slide, you may think that this slide deck is like 5 years old at least, but no, it's brand new. By this slide, I just wanted to say that everything we do on the web right now, almost up to right now, we've started doing in Flash in like 2005 or so. And then when writing for Flash was on the wall, we started to finding ways to do the same thing in JavaScript, in standard technologies. And basically just a few years ago, we achieved parity with what we were able to do with Flash 10 years ago. So, but now we are moving forward, and we are moving forward with JavaScript and SVG. So most of you probably know SVG as a vector image format, but how many of you know that it has its own DOM that you can manipulate from JavaScript? Oh, the majority, almost half. So let me see. Let me show you a quick demo of that. Yeah, so this is some basic, not very pretty chart that I've just created as an SVG in code. So right here we have a bunch of rectangles defined in SVG markup, and then we have that sun circle created with JavaScript and inserted in that SVG. And here we have a bunch of declarative animations that let us animate that one bar chart that is animating here. The problem with these declarative animations is that they are not supported in IE and Edge, and probably will never be supported, or not in the nearest future. But that's not a huge problem, because we have two more options to do the animations. First of all, we can do, to preserve time, I will not show this, but this works. You can do the same animation in CSS. Not the same, but you can animate objects in SVG with CSS, or you can do, the same thing with JavaScript. So it's not fun that declarative animations are not supported in Edge, but it's also not a huge problem because we have other options. So as you've seen, that JavaScript code was quite verbose. This is just to place one circle on the image. So we can use some SVG manipulation libraries. A couple of them are SVG.js and snap SVG. So this is like the verbose code that you would do with vanilla JavaScript, which with SVG.js is basically one line. This is easier, much easier than what we saw before, but if you're doing charts, why not just use a charting library? Because it's still a lot of extra work, not just drawing rectangles on the page. So I will show you a demo using a charting library called Chartist. So in this demo, the whole chart is generating this chart is basically this line of code. Everything else is just data and boilerplate. So with one line of code, you get this bar chart, you get the grids, you get everything, and more importantly, it's additionally to that, it's also responsive. So, and this is just one line of code. So obviously, if you need something extra special or you want to create a charting library, then you can do it by hand, but nowadays there is no reason to do that because there are a bunch of them, starting from free to very expensive. So this was the basic stuff that you can do with SVG. If you want to see the awesome stuff you can do with SVG, I recommend you look up and watch this talk by Sarah Drasner called SVG Can Do That. I will show you just one demo. So this is all done with SVG and JavaScript, nothing else. This is quite amazing, and if you watch that talk, you will see a lot more amazing things. So what are the main traits of modern JavaScript charting libraries? So first of all, it's interactive, so the users can poke around and analyze the data. It's animated, so developers can lead users' attention to where it's important. And most importantly, it's client-side, so millions of servers around the world are relieved from the burden of generating a lot of those static images. So modern JavaScript libraries are used in dashboards and reports like Google Analytics. They are used in infographics. So previously, to create a nice-looking infographic, you would need to have some big company in a department, or at least a person who is doing just that. Nowadays, tools like Infogram just democratize this, and you can create quite nice-looking infographics just in your browser by dragging and dropping stuff using JavaScript and SVG. So if you want to see a lot of good infographics and good data visualizations, I recommend you watch this TED Talk by David McCandless, who is one of the most known names in the field. A lot of awesome infographics there, and his trademark is like taking huge data sets, a lot of information, and distilling them into nice looking and simple infographics. So one of the known ones is this thing. So this is the map of the world, and a thing each country is most known for, according to some data, which is referenced somewhere. So if we zoom into our part of the world, we see that Germany has the best passport. Good for you. So in the previous version of this infographic, Germany was best known for solar panels, which I guess also makes sense. My country, Lithuania, is in this version is known for fastest Wi-Fi, which is much better than what was known before. Anyone wants to guess what was in the previous version the most? Anyone else? Yeah, but that's weird, you know. There is always US and Spain. Anyone else? Yeah? Yes. You've seen this before? So I will take fastest Wi-Fi over suicide any minute. So if you want to have a nice thing on your coffee table, I highly recommend you buy one of these or both books by David McCandless. These basically have no text except for the labels in the infographics, and you can use them just, you know, when you're bored, open one and look at interesting facts. Or if you get hooked, you can spend hours analyzing this. So we use modern libraries, charting libraries in tools like Power BI and Tableau. Anyone using Power BI or Tableau? Yeah. Also, there are people whose profession is data visualization something. Anyone here who has data visualization in their job title? Yeah, so these people exist. They have their own conferences, podcasts, and whatnot. And most of them, when they do visualizations on the web, use a library called D3.js. So this is a very powerful library that lets you do a lot of things, almost anything. But for those of us who are just web developers who need to do some visualizations, it could be an overkill. So I'll show you a few demos. So this is basically a simple bar chart that can change from stacked to grouped. Then this is a polar chart made to be a clock. This should show the actual time. Yeah, it works. And you can do totally random things like this. This brings us to the future. So I believe libraries like the D3.js will continue to push the envelope, but what we can do only with things like D3 and a lot of programming today, I think will be democratized in the future and will be available to regular front-end developers in a simpler form and more accessible. So a very powerful tool in delivering the message that you want to deliver is storytelling. And creating a good story around your data is hugely powerful, but not an easy thing to do. Not an easy thing to do. If you want to see great stories told with data, I recommend you to watch this talk by Hans Rosling. This is a TED talk from 12 years ago, and back then they had to use some custom software that they developed to show these visualizations. But right now it's within reach of normal web developers, and they actually rebuilt most of their visualizations using just JavaScript. So this is a visualization of poverty in the world over time. So basically, you can see that in the 1800s, most of the world's population lived in poverty, and as time goes by, we are getting better and better. Still not perfect, but at least according to their data, by now, by 2015, only 11% live below the poverty line. Still a lot, but very different from what we had before. Another interesting story told with data visualization is this chart created by Antti Liponen from the Finnish Meteorological Institute, if I remember correctly. So basically, all of us have seen a lot of articles about climate change and global warming, and if you see another one, you probably just skip it because you've seen it all before. But by creating this animated visualization, Antti was able to get more than 11,000 retweets by now, because it shows in a graphical way, in an animated way, how the climate has changed over time. And this attracts attention. To do that, he used Python and some script to generate this video that is posted to Twitter. But nowadays, we can totally do something similar with just JavaScript, and we can do a lot more. We can make it interactive. You can, zoom in and select stuff, etc. So you don't need to generate videos to do that. You can give your users a lot more power these days. Another interesting story is this. Anyone knows where this is? This is Hawaii. Has anyone heard about a fake missile alert in Hawaii? I think it was this year, or was it last year? I think early this year. Everyone heard about it? So how many of you have heard about this website? None of you? Okay. So, and does anyone know what those two have in common? Okay, so let me show you. So So Pornhub, after that false missile alert, released an interesting article in data visualization. So what you see here is traffic to Pornhub from Hawaii leading to that alert. So let's see. So this is supposedly when they launched the rocket. And now the alert. And now it got canceled, and we are back to porn. So as you can see, Pornhub, they had this visualization as a static image, and they had to add a lot of text into it. Animated version could be just that, and you don't even need to translate it to other languages probably. So when you see charts on the web these days, they're usually just one chart type. You often see different chart types mixed and matched in infographics, but when you look at the practical, like regular charts in dashboards or something, you have them separately. Maximum that you can see is something like we've seen in that demo is like, here you have a bar chart, here you have some clock, here you have a map, and it's like put on the common background. But there is no reason, there is actually a reason why this is so. So one of the reasons is obviously that not every set of data is visualized properly this way, but many of them could be visualized much better if you combine multiple charts in one. But the reason is pretty down to earth. It just was very difficult to do with current crop of charting libraries. But in the future, I think it will be much easier, and many people would use it. You just need to, use a little bit more of imagination and see how it works better. Additionally, we will use visualization not just as an illustration, but as UI components. So right here on the left side, you see Google Analytics. So basically, the charts here are just an illustration for the data. And on the right side, you see Power BI dashboard, where charts are actual UI elements. You can interact with them, and other things changed. You can use visualization as UI to do some drill downs. You can filter stuff by it, or you can just, simplest thing, link out to some external thing. So a few more demos. So this looks like a normal map. And you can hover, can see different countries. So normally, if you wanted to show some stats about one of those countries, you would probably have a drop-down here to filter it, or the best you can hope, you would click on this, and then it will take you to another page or show a pop-up with some stats. But why not just show it right here? You don't need to go out of context, and you can see different stats right away. The one that I showed you before, so you can zoom in here, see the data, and do everything using just visualization. You also don't need any extra controls. This is the car sales in US by brand and model. So you can do drill down. You can see different models. So every time I show this to geeks, they ask, where's Tesla? So Tesla is still in the other. But it's 2017 data, so next year it probably will be somewhere. Okay, so this is Power BI. As I mentioned, you have a sort of a dashboard, and you can, click on one bar, and it will show you other things. Oops, I clicked too fast. So basically, it filters all other charts by the one you selected here. Also, no need for extra UI filters, etc. And this is something a little bit of avant-garde. I don't know what is this for, but I can drag things around and maybe sort stuff into different buckets. But still, no need for extra UI where it's not actually needed. So IoT and different sensors bring new challenges. So those challenges are that we have a lot of data, huge amounts of data, and most of the charting libraries that were built before all this IoT revolution will die from that amount of data. You need to do something on the server side, and obviously you should do it anyway, but the amounts are just huge these days. The same goes for machine learning and AI. Again, lots of data, but additionally, when you get some data sets back from some machine learning or AI algorithm, you sometimes don't know what shape that the data has. And you can have another AI decide what type of chart to show for this, but you can also give this opportunity to your users and just let them change the chart type. So this is the fake example of real-time data. So this comes once in a second. So with such frequency, we can obviously do it with the same JavaScript and SVG thing. But if we got thousands of records or millions of records a second, then it will just die. And luckily, there is another web technology called HTML Canvas, which is not very good for interactive and other charts, but it's much more performant because it doesn't have the DOM. It just paints pixels on the screen. And it performs much better for such scenarios. So in this example, we have some data. We have this data like every minute, but when we zoom out, it gets overwhelming, and then we can just switch the period and show data, aggregated data every 10 minutes, etc. So if we had more data, we will switch again and show it at a different interval. And this is another example. So maybe you have a chart that looks like this, and it's hard to see, hard to compare it. Maybe you can give your user an option to just expand it and have a normal bar chart and look at it. This is Power BI again, and it has an interesting feature called Quick Insights. So you just give it your data set, and it generates some insights based on its algorithms. Most of these are nonsense, but some of them are quite interesting. But the point is that, as you can see, they are very different, and different things happen here. So they try to do their best work to guess what type of chart to use for each of these insights. But if you don't have that luxury to decide this, you can just give your user an option to change the chart type. Again, if you have a data set that looks more or less like this, so you can see that the first bar is much bigger than the rest of them, but then it's really hard to compare because every other bar is quite small. So some designers in print do this, but then data visualizations professionals say, no, this is terrible because you cannot see that this bar is 10 times bigger than the second one, not just less than 2 times bigger. This is unacceptable. So luckily, we have interactive web. We can do this. So we can have the best of both worlds. We can show the data as is, and we can also let them compare the other charts. The world has gone mobile. Obviously, our data visualizations has to be mobile friendly as well. So they have to be touch friendly, and they have to be responsive. Again, a few demos. So this is a bar chart that you can move with multi-touch. I don't know for what, but maybe you can make an equalizer or something like this out of it. Or you have a reason to change the data. Maybe it's a control panel for some operator of some nuclear plant. Hopefully not. And this is just a report where we have a donut chart, which looks nice when you can show the labels around it. But if you're on mobile, then if your screen when your screen goes smaller, this becomes unreadable, and then a good thing is to switch to legend, not just show the labels on the chart itself. Accessibility is a big theme in the past couple of years. Our luck is that we use SVG for most of the charts, and these have a DOM, and these have almost all the same tools that you have in HTML for accessibility. So keep that in mind, or if you are choosing a ready-made library, always check what's their story about accessibility is. Privacy is a huge thing in Germany. I must admit I really hate when I go to Germany and I cannot use Street View in many places, which I'm totally used to doing everywhere else. I feel like I cannot do anything without it. I think you can see it. Is there Street View in Hamburg? Yeah, but in many places in Germany there is no Street View, so that's hard to get around without it for people who are used to it. And many of you have probably dealt or at least heard about GDPR and all the things around it. So before that, I don't know, in Germany you've had strict laws before, but in other places people just used to ship all the data to like Power BI, Microsoft Server in the US and not care. Nowadays it's not that easy, and for many it's now a must to bring that data back and do something on your own. So even those people who just used to do that, use a third-party service and not care about any of those charts, now have to care. And we obviously cannot omit VR, AR, MR, XR, whatever you want to call it. So it remains to be seen if there is anything special about it, about visualization in that space. So Microsoft released Power BI for mixed reality, an app for mixed reality, and there is basically nothing special in it. Just shows flat charts on the wall. And maybe that's right, because some people try to do this, like it's a knee-jerk reaction, let's play some 3D charts in space. But these are not very useful. And to make it useful, they had to make values that different so you can see something. If they were more or less the same, you wouldn't understand anything from that chart. So I hope you've seen some inspiring things, and I hope you take a look at all the beauty the modern web has to offer. And the next time you implement data visualizations or just some basic charting in your work, you don't just go the old school way, but use your imagination and use modern technologies. And please check out what my friends at AM Charts do. And additionally, totally unrelated, I've written a book called Conferences for Introverts, and you can get it for free from this URL if you're one of us. And I also have some stickers and stickers. So if you have any questions, I cannot see you, so maybe I move here. No, but I can make them available. So I will post them somewhere and tweet. You can follow me right here if you use Twitter, and you'll see them today or tomorrow. Any more questions? Or comments? Okay.